The story starts on November 7, 2018, at 4 p.m., in the town of Paradise, California. A school bus driver named Kevin was finishing his route, dropping off children at their homes after school. Once all the kids had been dropped off, Kevin parked the bus at the bus depot. His supervisor, Ruby, informed him that his bus still needed to go in for maintenance. Kevin asked Ruby if there were any extra shifts available. He needed the extra income to cover his expenses, but Ruby told him that there was nothing open at the moment. She added, "I'll let you know." Kevin went home. On the way, he received a call from the veterinarian, who told him that his dog's cancer had spread and that he needed to bring the dog in. At home, Kevin's mother was there. His son, Sean, had come home from school early because he was sick. Kevin told Sean that school was important. Sean snapped back, "Not to you, it wasn't." The truth was, Kevin had dropped out of school because he was about to become a father, and he didn't want Sean to make the same mistake, not taking school seriously and struggling through life the way he had. Instead of listening, Sean turned up his music to full volume. Kevin got irritated and said, "Wait till you have to pay bills." They argued, and Sean yelled, "I wish you were dead." Later, Kevin took his dog to the vet. It was the dog's final moments. Kevin had owned him since he was a puppy. The next morning, strong winds caused an electrical cable on a hilltop to snap, igniting a fire. The flames began spreading rapidly because of the wind. A red flag wildfire warning had already been issued for Paradise. At the depot, Ruby told Kevin that the mechanic would service his bus today, so he needed to return on time. Kevin took the bus and headed out. Meanwhile, the wildfire was growing fast. A passing truck reported it to the fire and rescue department, who immediately contacted CAL FIRE. 2 fire trucks were sent to try to contain the flames. Dry, powerful winds were blowing through the mountains. The firefighters realized that the fire had started from a power line, but reaching the location was extremely difficult. They advanced slowly along the narrow, twisting mountain roads. As Kevin was picking up schoolchildren, his mother kept calling him repeatedly, but Kevin didn't answer right away because he was still on duty. When he finally picked up, his mother told him that Sean's condition had worsened. At that moment, Kevin received an order from base. Once he finished the drop-off, he had to bring the bus back for maintenance immediately. Kevin replied, "I'll refuel and then come back." He told his mom to check Sean's temperature. Meanwhile, the firefighters still couldn't reach the fire. There was no clear route forward, and they had to find another way. All of this information was sent to CAL FIRE Division Chief Ray Martinez. Paradise was still far from the fire zone, so they didn't think there would be any danger there yet. On the phone, Sean wouldn't respond. His body temperature had reached 101 degrees Fahrenheit. Kevin said, "Mom, I can't talk right now. I have to get the bus to the depot. I'll pick up medicine for Sean on the way home." Just then, Chief Ray received word of another fire, this one on Rim Road, north of Kona. It was far from the original fire, and it too had been caused by a power line. Chief Ray became furious at the PG&E lineman, shouting, "We gave you a red flag warning last night and told you to shut down the power lines. Shut down all the lines now." At that moment, an engineer named Hopkins radioed Chief Ray from Suwonsee, saying a very serious situation was developing. Hopkins suddenly saw spot fires appearing in the area. They were spreading at a frightening speed, and visibility was rapidly disappearing. Even though this area was far from the other fires and the power lines there had already been shut down, the fire continued to spread. Chief Ray assessed the situation and said, "It's all one fire. It's all one damn wire." The single massive blaze was now expanding at an alarming rate. He immediately dispatched resources to Kona. Back at the bus depot, Ruby warned all the drivers about the wildfire, saying, "You know the drill, keep listening to the radio." She told Kevin to get back quickly, otherwise he would miss his afternoon route due to the maintenance schedule. But Kevin still had to stop and pick up medicine for his son. Meanwhile, Engineer Hopkins began helping to evacuate residents without vehicles, loading them into his truck. At the same time, Kevin got a call from his ex-wife, Linda, who said that Sean had texted her, asking her to come get him. Kevin said, "That's not necessary. He's sick, and I've already picked up his medicine. Everything's fine. I can't talk right now, I'm working." Linda replied, I'm working too. Pete and I are supposed to fly to Colorado tonight. Kevin was hurt hearing that, but he ended the call and reported the smoke he was seeing back to his base. Ruby said, forget about the smoke. Just get the bus here as fast as you can, or you'll need to start looking for another job. Meanwhile, Chief Ray was sending fire brigades toward Concow, but by the time they would arrive, it would already be too late. Engineer Hopkins was barely managing to keep his vehicle on the road. Air tankers were deployed to fight the fire, but because of the intense winds, they couldn't hit their targets accurately. Chief Ray instructed Hopkins to head toward a bridge and take shelter in the water. Hopkins stopped his vehicle and told everyone to get out and into the water. Everyone quickly obeyed and climbed into the water. The flames were approaching fast. Fire trucks were unable to reach them, since all the roads were blocked. Soon, the fire engulfed the area where people were standing in the water. Chief Ray tried to reach Hopkins over the radio, but there was no response. Everyone feared they hadn't made it through, but then, finally, a response came through. They had survived, though everyone was badly injured. Hopkins reported that the fire was now advancing rapidly toward Paradise. Back in Paradise, Kevin also noticed fire trucks racing past. He left a voicemail for his son, saying, "Sorry about last night. I picked up your medicine. I'll be home right after work." He also mentioned the fire in Conga, saying there was no need to worry and to just keep an eye on Channel 7 News. Chief Ray issued evacuation warnings for several zones in East Paradise, but when they tried to send out the official evacuation alert from Town Hall, the signal failed. The scene shifted to an elementary school. They didn't want to wait any longer for an evacuation order, so the staff started calling parents. However, some of the children had parents working out of town, so they would need to take those kids to an alternate collection point where their parents could pick them up later. Kevin then got another call from Linda, who was angry, calling him unreliable. Kevin admitted that he had made a mistake, saying he hadn't realized how sick his son really was. He didn't want to argue further about it. Linda said, "This was the first weekend I was going away with someone else since we split." She continued, "I know everything has been hard for you since your dad died, but think about Sean. Your life is a mess, and he doesn't want to live with you." Kevin loved his son deeply. Becoming emotional, he sent another voice message to Sean, saying, "I need to know that you're okay, buddy." He decided to go straight home instead of returning to the bus depot. But just then, Ruby informed all drivers that they were evacuating East Paradise. Any driver currently in that area had to get out immediately. If they had any children on board, they should evacuate them to the Chico depot outside of town. At the elementary school, parents were arriving to pick up their kids. For the children whose parents couldn't make it, the plan was to transfer them to another elementary school as instructed, where their parents could collect them later. However, there were still 23 children remaining, and they needed a bus to get them out. The school principal called Ruby. Ruby asked all her drivers whether anyone was nearby, but no one was on that route, except Kevin, who was already on his way home. Kevin now faced two choices: go home to his sick son or pick up the stranded children. At first, Kevin told himself, no, but then he told Ruby, "I can get them." Ruby replied, "All right, we'll do the maintenance later. Just get those kids out." Kevin arrived at the elementary school. He wanted the kids to board the bus quickly, but the teacher, Mary, insisted on calmly lining them up. They were young children, and they couldn't see the adults panic. Everything had to be done calmly, which was taking time. Kevin said, "Hurry up. You need to understand how urgent this is." Once the children were on the bus, Kevin told Mary she'd have to come with them, saying, "I can only drop the kids off. I can't manage them once we're there. I need to get to my family." Mary informed the principal and then joined Kevin on the bus. Kevin wanted to take an alternate route, but Mary said they had to follow the official evacuation plan. At that moment, there were at least 15 miles of traffic all heading toward Chico. Chief Ray arrived at his headquarters. He wanted to evacuate the entire region, but doing that would trap his fire engines in traffic and block access to the town. A PG&E worker named Mark Rogers arrived as well. Ray told him, "Shut off all the power in town." Then he gave the order to evacuate the whole town. On the other side, however, communication between Ruby and Kevin was completely cut off. They could no longer talk, and Kevin's phone had stopped working. His bus was now the only one left in East Paradise. According to safety protocol, the bus only had a first aid kit and a fire extinguisher. Mary asked Kevin about himself. Kevin said he had moved back here only a few months ago, but he had grown up in Paradise. Because they had left the school late, they were now stuck in the traffic jam. Ruby informed fire control that they had lost contact with one of their buses in East Paradise. Ruby instructed Kevin to ignore the smoke and bring the bus back quickly, warning, "If you don't, you'll need to find another job." Meanwhile, Chief Ray was sending more fire crews toward Concow, but by the time they arrived, it would already be too late. Engineer Hopkins was barely able to drive through the worsening conditions. Air tankers were deployed to battle the flames, but the fierce winds made it impossible for them to hit their intended targets. Chief Ray radioed Hopkins, telling him to head to a bridge and seek refuge in the water. Hopkins stopped the vehicle and ordered everyone to get out and into the water as fast as possible. They all hurried in, as the fire was closing in quickly. The fire engines couldn't reach them because the roads were completely blocked. When the flames finally overtook their location, Chief Ray tried repeatedly to make contact with Hopkins, but there was no response. Everyone feared the worst, that the entire group had perished. Then, suddenly, a message came through: they had survived, though all were severely injured. Hopkins reported that the fire was advancing rapidly toward Paradise. In Paradise, Kevin also saw fire trucks speeding by. He left a voicemail for his son, saying, "I'm sorry about last night. I picked up your medicine and I'll be home as soon as I finish work." He reassured him about the fire near Conga, saying there was no reason to worry, and to keep an eye on Channel 7 News. Chief Ray issued evacuation alerts for several zones in East Paradise, but when they tried sending them from Town Hall, the system failed because of a signal error. At an elementary school, the staff decided they couldn't wait for an official evacuation order any longer. They began calling parents themselves, but many of the children's parents worked out of town, meaning those kids would have to be transported to a designated collection point where their parents could later find them. Kevin got another call from Linda. She accused him of being unreliable. Kevin admitted he'd been wrong. He hadn't realized how sick his son truly was. He didn't want to argue about it anymore. Linda said, "This was supposed to be the first weekend I went away with someone else since we separated." She continued, "I know things have been hard for you since your dad passed, but think about Sean. Your life's a mess, and he doesn't even want to live with you." Kevin loved his son deeply. Emotional, he sent Sean another voice message saying, "I just need to know that you're okay, buddy." Kevin decided to head straight home instead of returning to the depot. But just then, Ruby announced to all her drivers that East Paradise was being evacuated. Anyone still in that area needed to leave immediately. If any drivers had children on board, they were to take them to the Chico depot outside of town. At the elementary school, parents started arriving to collect their children. Those whose parents couldn't make it were to be transferred to another school per the new emergency plan. Parents would then pick them up from there, but 23 students still remained. They needed a bus to get them out. The principal called Ruby, who asked over the radio if any driver was nearby. None were, except Kevin, who was already on his way home. Kevin was now torn between two choices: go to his sick son, or pick up the stranded children. At first, he muttered, "No, no," but then told Ruby, "I can get them." Ruby replied, "Okay, we'll do the maintenance later, just get those kids out." Kevin arrived at the elementary school and urged everyone to board quickly. But the teacher, Mary, carefully organized the young students into a line. They couldn't panic the little ones, so they had to move calmly, even though it took time. Kevin urged, "Please hurry up, this is an emergency." Once the children were finally on board, he told Mary she'd have to come along too. "I can drop the kids off, but I can't manage them there. I need to get to my family." Mary informed the principal and then joined him. Kevin wanted to take a different route, but Mary insisted on following the planned evacuation path. At that point, at least 15 miles of traffic was already trying to reach Chico. Chief Ray arrived at headquarters. He wanted to order a full evacuation, but doing so would block all the roads for the fire trucks trying to enter the town. A representative from PG&E, Mark Rogers, showed up, and Ray told him, "Shut off all the power in town." Then he officially ordered a full evacuation. Meanwhile, Ruby lost contact with Kevin completely. No radio, no phone. Kevin's bus was the only one left in East Paradise. By safety protocol, the bus only carried a first aid kit and a fire extinguisher. Mary asked Kevin about his life. He said he'd moved back to Paradise only a few months ago, though he'd grown up there. Because they had left the school later than planned, they were now trapped in heavy traffic. Ruby notified the fire control center that one of her buses was missing in East Paradise. When the parents heard that a new bus driver was the one driving that bus, they grew even more anxious. But Ruby reassured them, saying, "I can personally vouch for Kevin. I trust him completely. You need to trust him too." Kevin was now steering carefully along that narrow mountain road. There was barely any clearance on either side of the bus. Suddenly, people began coming from the opposite direction. They stopped Kevin, warning him that there was fire ahead. Kevin stopped them from turning back, saying, "You can't go back. There's fire behind you too." But the people insisted, "We have to take our chances." Now Kevin was trapped, unable to move forward or backward. He got off the bus and climbed up to a ridge to see what was happening. All around him, flames were closing in from every direction. Kevin returned to the bus and said, "We can't go anywhere. We'll have to stay put." Mary said, "We can leave on foot." But Kevin replied, "These kids wouldn't last 2 minutes out there." Mary shot back, "So what then? We just stay here and wait?" Kevin answered, "This is the only place that isn't burning. Everywhere else is on fire." Mary asked, "What if the flames reach here? What happens to these children then?" They were completely out of options. Kevin tore his shirt into strips, soaked the pieces in water, and made makeshift filters for the kids to breathe through. He taped over the air conditioning vents so smoke couldn't enter the bus. Meanwhile, the firefighters' water supply had completely run out. There was no pressure left in the nearby hydrants. People were dying in their cars or fleeing on foot from the flames. Hearing this, Chief Ray gave one order: focus entirely on saving lives. Inside the bus, everyone's condition was worsening. Kevin stopped Mary from standing up and told the children himself to stay away from the windows. He tried to keep them calm with conversation. Some of the kids asked if it was nighttime already. Kevin explained, "No, the smoke has blocked the sunlight." Little Toby said, "I want my daddy." Kevin replied softly, "I know. And he's doing everything he can to reach you." Mary told Kevin, "Let the children sleep. It's better that way." But Kevin said, "No, we can't talk like that, not even to ourselves." Mary said quietly, "I only left Paradise once, for 2 weeks in Ohio. I thought if I followed the rules, everything would always be safe here. But if I make it out of this, I'm going to travel. I'll take my son to Legoland." Kevin replied, "I spent my whole life trying to stay away from Paradise, and now all I want is to make a life here." He continued, "When I got the call to pick up these kids, I thought maybe if I got them to safety, I could earn a second chance. But second chances don't always work that way." Then Kevin said quietly, "I last spoke to my dad 28 years ago. We had a fight. He came at me the way he always had before, and I snapped that night. I shouted at him, slammed the front door, cursed his name, and told him I never wanted to see him again. Then he yelled, 'I wish you were dead.' He went on, 'A few years later, my life fell apart. And a few months ago, while I was working a night shift, Mom called and said Dad was very sick. I drove all night, but I was too late. He was gone. I was late as a son, and now I'm late as a father.'" Kevin broke down crying as he spoke, but suddenly, a fire erupted right beside the bus. Kevin grabbed the fire extinguisher and tried to put it out, but more fires ignited all around them. The extinguisher ran empty. Desperate, Kevin used his own clothes to beat the flames, but it was useless. The fire couldn't be stopped that way. He ran back to the bus, but now the engine wouldn't start. Kevin told Mary to take the driver's seat and open the hood himself. He pulled out the air filter, and the bus finally roared to life. Kevin now had to drive the bus straight through the flames, dodging burning, fallen trees in their path. Fire surrounded them on every side, and the bus was right in the middle of it all. The children screamed in terror. Kevin gripped the wheel with his burned hand and kept driving through the inferno. Finally, his courage and determination paid off. They made it out. Kevin brought the bus safely to the Chico depot. There, parents were reunited with their children. As Toby left, Kevin smiled and said, "Good luck." Mary thanked him deeply, and they hugged as everyone applauded them both. Mary was reunited with her own family too. Kevin turned to Ruby and said with a faint smile, "Time for maintenance." But Kevin still needed to find his own family. He checked the lost and found list but couldn't find their names. He began searching through the crowd, and finally, he saw his mother. Their neighbor had brought her and Sean there safely. Kevin's mother said softly, "It's for the best." After the fire was over, Kevin returned to his house. It had been completely destroyed. Among the ashes, he found a charred photograph of himself and Sean. Then, Sean appeared behind him, alive. The two embraced tightly as Kevin's mother watched them from a distance.